Good evening, everyone. I'm Janet Steinmeier. I'm Lesley's president, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the opening event for this year's Thought Leadership Series. Before I introduce our speaker, Commissioner D'Arcangelo, I'd like to issue a warm welcome to Carla Kath, his communications director, to Erin Foley and Elizabeth Keegan, our ASL interpreters, to Tari Gibson, our captioner. You will see all of their work tonight. And I'd love to extend a warm welcome to two special guests in the audience. With us tonight is Lesley's former president, Rich Hansen. Rich, we're delighted to have you here. And we're also joined tonight by our Spring Thought Leadership Series speaker, Marcia Medali, who's the CEO of Riverside Community Care. She'll be with us on March 24th to talk about responding to the nation's mental health crisis. Building on our speaker program we launched last year, we've invited a diverse array of inspirational thinkers and creators and visionaries at the cutting edge of the human arts of education, counseling, and the arts to join us this year. It's our hope that these programs and the conversations they inspire will serve as a catalyst for a more just and connected world. We'll email all the attendees tonight the full calendar of speakers and hope you'll enjoy future programs with us. The next event will be on November 18th with Nick Lehane, who's an acclaimed New York-based theater maker and puppet artist, and he will present some of his work. Tonight's opening speaker, Commissioner David D'Arcangelo, is so ideally suited to kick off the Thought Leadership Series. And David, I am so happy to see you here tonight. This is not David's first visit to Lesley, though. Commissioner D'Arcangelo has been involved with our Threshold program, serving as a member of the Threshold Advisory Council, and speaking at the Threshold graduation in 2017. For any of you who are not familiar with our Threshold program, it's a 2-year residential program we started 40 years ago to prepare students with diverse learning differences for independent living and working. In fact, my own connection to Lesley was as the parent of a Threshold student. And I have to tell you, it was a life-changing experience for my son and ultimately for me. Creating an inclusive community, one that welcomes and serves students of all types of backgrounds and experiences, is one of our highest priorities at Lesley. That's why we're so pleased to have Commissioner D'Arcangelo here to talk about the importance of inclusion in employment for people with disabilities. This is a topic he knows firsthand, having been legally blind from a young age and as a parent of a daughter on the autism spectrum. He's built successful careers in the public and private sectors, and an important focus of his current work is exploring the various ways in which having a disability helps make job candidates uniquely qualified for employment. His crucial effort to educate policymakers and employers is changing the landscape for employment here in Massachusetts and beyond. With a $34 million annual budget, the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind provides access to employment opportunities and social rehabilitation with the goal of increasing independence and self-determination for people who are visually impaired or blind. Before taking the helm of the commission in 2018, David was director of the Massachusetts Office on Disability for 3.5 years and was a former chair of the Commission for the Blind Rehabilitation Council. He has made and implemented policy at the municipal level, serving 3 terms as a Malden City Councilor at large, at the state level, working for the administrations of 4 governors. In 2014, he was the Republican nominee for Secretary of State, becoming one of the first individuals who identified with a disability to be on a statewide ballot in the Commonwealth. And he has served as an election officer for the city of Boston. He now has a voice in shaping federal policy for people with disabilities. In 2020, David was appointed to serve on the National Council on Disability, an independent agency that advises the President of the United States and Congress on disability policies, programs, and practices. David is a graduate of Suffolk University, where he has been an adjunct faculty member in the Communications and Journalism Department. I am so pleased to welcome Commissioner D'Arcangelo back to Lesley, and I am excited to learn what ideas his talk and conversations will spark in the Lesley community. David, the Zoom floor is all yours.
President Steinmeier, thank you so much for your leadership and for the opportunity to be with you and the Lesley community tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. To everybody who joined us, thank you so much. It's great to be with you. I truly appreciate that introduction. It was a little too much to maybe. I try to be humble. So I think we're going to go right to the slides here. I wanted to start with a way to approach this topic of why employment matters for people with disabilities. So I like to start with one of my favorite Stoic philosophers, Epictetus. It's impossible to learn that with which one thinks they already know. So I try to stay humble and open-minded. These are long-standing, very profound challenges that we're facing trying to get people with disabilities employed. And I believe employment goes to the heart of a person and really to their identity. I submit to you, if you're out and about and you meet somebody at the grocery store and you strike up a conversation, really what's one of the first things you're going to exchange with that person? They're going to say, well, oh, what is it you do? And so I'd say I'm a commissioner, or you'd say you're the president of a university, or you'd say you're a clerk, or this, that, or the other. If you're a person with a disability who hasn't been in the workforce for years, you're going to start telling me about your disability. And while that's fine, that just goes to show that it goes to the identity of a person. So really what we're trying to do here is we believe that work brings dignity, self-determination, and independence. So with that, I ask you to keep an open mind, and we'll go to the why employment matters for people with disabilities here in Massachusetts, but really across the nation as well. So we'll start with an overview. I'll give you some background and experiences so you understand my prerogative and where we're coming from. We're going to touch on a great ad campaign that we're doing at MCB. Maybe you've seen it on TV. It's been playing even during the Red Sox game during the series here. What's your vision campaign? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then the challenges, really, these are long-standing and profound. And I would assert they affect not only the people with disabilities, really our cities, our state, our country, society in general. And then I'm an optimistic person, so we'll spend plenty of time on the opportunities of how we can make positive change together and really improve the human condition. That's why I got into public service in the first place. I'm sure that's what gratifies and motivates many of you to do the great work you do. So with that, we can begin. So a little bit of an overview about the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. Massachusetts Commission for the Blind is one of the oldest and most established human service agencies in the nation. We were established in 1906. One of the first commissioners was Helen Keller. So I have big shoes to fill, serving our nearly 25,000 consumers that are just in about every city and town, all 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. And as Janet said, as the president said, really our goal is to improve the lives of people with disabilities and people with blindness specifically by promoting independence and self-determination. We believe that work brings dignity, and so we are one of the 2 vocational rehabilitation agencies in the state, along with our sister agency, MRC. We'll get into that in a little more detail in a few slides. But we achieve our success by partnering with academia. So Lesley and other organizations, nonprofit organizations like the Perkins School for the Blind, the Carroll Center for the Blind, MABV, which is the Massachusetts Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and many other nonprofit and community organizations that together form the blindness community and part of the larger disability community in Massachusetts. One of the focuses at MCB, although we have several missions, the main mission is to promote independence and self-determination across people of all ages and all strata. One of the things we're talking about tonight, though, one of our main missions at MCB is vocational rehabilitation. So as I indicated, MCB is one of the 2 vocational rehabilitation agencies in the Commonwealth. We get money from the federal government through the Rehabilitation Services Administration, which is a sub-recipient from the U.S. Department of Education. So U.S. Department of Education, RSA, pushes out money on a formula basis to all 50 states. Out of the 50 states, about 25 of them run it like we do here in Massachusetts, where we have a general agency, that would be our MRC. They cover all of the prevalence types of disabilities, where we focus in specifically on the blind and deafblind. So about 25 states operate that way like we do. And so VR services covers people from the age of 14 all the way to 22, and really even some after that. But it's pretty much junior high and high school age students. And that's where we begin when we can. But what do we know? We know that most people who are blind age into their blindness. So yes, we have great emphasis, and we put out tools like this graphic novel devoted to reach our pre-ETS kids. That's our employment transition services kids. These are the ones who are 14 to 22. So yeah, we try to gear towards them, but we're very cognizant that a very significant amount of the individuals we serve are aging into blindness, much like me. So I joined MCB when I was 14 years old. And then I went out, detached my retina, and went completely blind. And I really needed MCB at that point and got rehab. So I've been through these programs. And then when I rehabbed and had different surgeries and had my vision restored to the point where I'm 2200, which by the way is right on the line. In Massachusetts, we have a legal definition of 2200. So if your visual acuity is 2200 or more, then you can be a consumer with MCB. And so really our focus on VR is getting people job ready. Because again, we believe that getting employed and having a career really makes people independent, self-determined, and builds their dignity. So another facet of our VR program is our Randolph Shepherd program, just to show you the span of services we provide. Yes, it's education, yes, it's training, but with the Randolph Shepherd program, we're actually providing business opportunities where we go out and we make people concession managers and really their own business owner to run convenience and sundry type of stands and stores in various state and federal and public office buildings. So just to give you an idea of the span of VR services that we provide at MCB. We get great results. You'll be pleased to know your state government, we're among the best in the nation at what we do. So for last year, we served about 1,000 consumers, which is actually up slightly from our pre-pandemic levels and up significantly over last year because so many things were closed during COVID. But our 155 closures, successful closures, we're among the leaders in the nation for doing that. That's a 25% increase year over year, despite COVID. So that's a testament to our team, to our VR counselors and our adjustment to blindness counseling that we provide, the assistive technology training we provide, the orientation and mobility training we provide. So it's really a testament to our team and our consumers for working hard to be able to get those results. I'd like to share with you a campaign. One of the things we're trying to do is attract more people into MCB so we can get them services. A significant dynamic of our population, again, for many of our consumers that are later in life blinded, which is a significant amount, they don't necessarily view themselves as blind. They might have a vision like me where to just come upon them, you might not know that they're legally blind. So they don't want to associate with being legally blind. They don't feel like they should be in our agency. There's maybe like a stigma there. So one of the things we've been trying to do is break those barriers down and let people know that we have services there for them. So I'd like to share this 30-second ad with you that maybe you've seen. We've shown it during Red Sox games, and it's been on during October, which is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Carla, why don't you go ahead and play the video for the folks.
The following PSA features various Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, or MCB, stakeholders sharing their vision for the future. It shows these individuals both talking to the camera and sitting or walking outdoors. The participants include Richard Phipps, a financial and real estate advisor, Yaweline Sanchez, an aspiring journalist, Charlie Richards, a student, as well as Charlie's mother, Laura Richards, Colleen Moran, Director of Workforce Programs at Spalding Rehabilitation Network, Lori Kremen, an educator with Brockton Public Schools, and Dr. Nicole Ross, an optometrist with the New England College of Optometry. The PSA ends with a graphic slate showing the MCB logo and contact information.
What's your vision?
My vision's 2200.
Light perception in the right eye and zero vision in the left eye.
2200 at best on my left eye, and on my right eye, I cannot see.
No, I mean, what's your vision?
My goal is to become a journalist.
To be able to work.
Financial independence.
My vision is employment opportunities for all, including people with disabilities.
My vision is for all of my students to dream big.
That he become fully independent.
For my patients to live their best lives.
What's your vision?
What's your vision?
What is your vision?
At the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, our vision is clear. We believe that all people who are blind or visually impaired should have the opportunity to work and thrive. To learn how we can help you meet your employment or workforce goals, call 800-392-6450 or visit mass.gov/MCB.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We put a lot of time and effort into that, and we're getting great results. We're getting more people coming into the agency as a result of it. So I think it's working, and that's what we're trying to do. So help us spread the message. You can find out more at our website, mass.gov/MCB. Carly, you can go to the next slide. All right, so unfortunately, we're going to talk about some challenges here. I'm a positive person, but I like to use challenges as opportunities. But I know you all came to talk about why employment matters. So let's get right into it, Carla. So let's give you a little bit of an understanding here of the preeminent federal civil rights law in America is the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. No, the ADA, not the American Dentistry Association, which if you do a Google search, that's what comes up most, unfortunately. Talking about the ADA. The ADA and its three-pronged definition, which defines people as disabilities as having a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, having a record of the impairment, or being regarded as having the impairment. There's no exhaustive list of disabilities. And this definition is applied so that, depending upon the data set that you look at, somewhere between 12 and 20% of the population are people with disabilities. And so what we're interested in talking about tonight is working age people with disabilities. So just keep that in your mind. As you look at the data here, it indicates somewhere between 40 and 56. The new census just came out. It might be up to actually 58 million people in America are people with disabilities. These are people that have real power, though. You don't traditionally think that with people with disabilities, but we're talking about $500 billion worth of spending power. It's a very substantial group here. In Massachusetts, we have about 785,000, somewhere around 12, or maybe again with the latest census, it might be up as much as 14% of people with disabilities in Massachusetts. And as I indicated, if you're over 65, there's a good chance that you're going to be a person with a disability at some point. Those numbers go up as you go to 80. Instead of a third, that gets closer to a half. So at some point in time, a very significant amount of us will be aging into disability. It's one of those groups that you may not want to belong to, but you never know what life is going to bring. So one of the things we're trying to do is get people to prepare for that and to overcome whatever challenges that the disability presents. Let's get into this now. I know this is an educational environment, so Many of you educators out there will probably love this slide that has a lot going on. Let's explain it. So let's start with that ADA definition of disability right up at the top, okay? That's the broadest form of disability, the broadest measurement of disability, if you will. Now that's going to include many people that you probably wouldn't, if you met them in the grocery store, you might not recognize or perceive them as a person with a disability. Maybe they have diabetes or cancer. Maybe they have a significant learning disability. All people with disabilities, capital D disabilities, are included in this ADA definition of disability, okay? So just think about that for one moment as we talk about the program level, which is the next level down, which is the level that we're primarily dealing with at MCB, at MRC, at many of the state agencies, where you quote unquote qualify by one virtue or another. You're legally blind. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. In Massachusetts, to be legally blind, you need to be certified legally blind by us. Well, how do we certify you legally blind? Well, we look to Mass General Law. Mass General Law indicates that if you're 2,200 or more, the eye care provider notifies us through a mandatory report of legal blindness. At that point, we register them and we can get the services flowing. And it's like that in many other agencies with other prevalence types as well. So that's the program level definition of disability. Again, this is also generally who we're talking about. This benefit level, which is the one at the bottom here, benefit level of disability, we know through surveys, particularly when the unemployment number comes out on the first Friday at noon every month, there is a disability abstract that comes out in that table A5, if you want to look at it, for those data or psychometrician, statistician people out there. We know through the surveys that a significant amount of this group have indicated that they do not want a job. Let's talk about that a little bit. Why don't they want a job? Well, the manner with which the federal government has set up the benefit programs is that once you get on significant public benefits, you have an 18-month trial work period. For example, many of the cash benefits like Social Security and SSDI have this 18-month trial work period where during that time, you're allowed to go out and earn money and get a job. But once that 18 months is up, if you're employed, you lose all your benefits. So if you've gone to great extent to get your health care, your housing, food, SNAP, WIC benefits, fuel assistance, cash payments, as we just talked about, and a myriad of other programs. I think there's something, we lost count. I think there's something like 54 different programs that people with disabilities who can automatically qualify them can get. So once you're setting that up, and once you become reliant on that, to then go out and get a $15 entry-level job at Walmart or some other get your foot in the door job at 18 bucks an hour, 20 bucks an hour, whatever it is, to upset that apple cart of all of these other services is a major dilemma. So please, I am not faulting, just to be clear, the people with disabilities that make that determination. People need housing, people need health care, people need cash to survive. So I certainly don't fault them, but what it does is it creates a benefit cycle that people can become dependent upon. So one of the things we're trying to solve for is how can we get people with disabilities to be able to work, because we believe work brings independence, self-determination, dignity, goes to your identity, but still be able to live and survive, which is what these safety net benefits are providing. It's a real conundrum. So let's, for the purposes of the discussion here, we're not going to focus as much on the benefit level disability cohort, because that's really a whole other discussion and it would take much more time than this lecture has. But just so we can go to the next slide, this will start to make sense for you now as we look at the data. So this data that we're talking about here, again, back to the 785,000 people in Massachusetts who have a disability by the ADA definition. So that's capital D disability. In that 785 is people with learning disabilities and diabetes and cancer, to people in wheelchairs, to people who are blind and deaf, and everybody on the whole spectrum of disability. Because I would assert to you, we are all in various states of ability. So to me, it doesn't matter what ability or disability you want to say you want to have. If you need assistance, then we want to help you. We're here to improve the human condition. So that's what we're talking about here. Let's boil this down though, this 785. What you have is the working age population. That's generally considered between the ages of 16, some measure it at 14, some measure it at 18. And I'm saying some because there are different data sets out there. One of the data sets we look at most, and the one here, which is the broadest measure, is the American Community Survey provided by the United States Census Bureau. This will indicate, and this breaks my heart every time I say it, that nearly 60% of all working age people with disabilities are not in the labor force. I'll say that again. Nearly 60% of all working age people with disabilities are not in the labor force. Forget about unemployed. If you're unemployed, at least you're in the labor force. These people are saying, no, I don't even want a job. I don't even want to consider employment. I've dropped out of the workforce. This is a national crisis. These are our sons and daughters, our neighbors, our friends, our family, that we're inhibiting to be independent and self-determined and dignified by taking part in a career, contributing to society, earning their own wage. And again, I don't, just to be sure for the 10th time, I don't fault these people for making that decision, because they're given a choice of, well, do you want to take the benefits or do you want to work? Because it's difficult, it's very difficult to do both. So just to put that dilemma out there, which remains, which we're trying to solve. All right, so back to this. Let's focus on this. So one of the things we know is that when we can get people resolved to work, we can go to the next slide, Carla. When we get people resolved to want to work, we can solve for that. But that really is the second step. The first step is to get the people with disabilities resolved to want to be in the workforce. And that's a challenge. And we spend a great deal, our counselors and our staff and the campaigns we do, we spend a great deal of time and resources trying to do that, trying to get people resolved to want to work, to be in the workforce, because it's hard, it's challenging. It's challenging for anybody, let alone when you then have additional challenges on top that are in place due to your disability. So we have a two-step challenge here. I assert that you really can't solve for step number 2 until we start solving for step number 1. So I think we're starting to change the hearts and minds here of opinion leaders, policymakers, agenda setters to spend more time on step 1. Let's get people resolved. Let's restore the value of work, because we believe, and I think the data shows too, it's more than just belief. The data shows that it brings independence and self-determination, which combined improves dignity and the human condition. We can go to the next slide, Carl. So a little bit about this. You would say, well, hey, Dave, isn't everybody already doing this? Aren't people with disabilities protected? They sure are. Your state has a proud history, our state, of doing this. Chapter 272, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 272, is a non-discrimination law, one of the first in the country, predates the ADA. Unlawful discrimination of housing and development, 151B, which also, by the way, establishes the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination. We have a service animal law. We have our own architectural access barriers regulations, 521 CMR, which are unique from all 50 states. We have our own code just for access regulations, which is a great thing. It's why we have truncated domes everywhere in Harvard Square and all throughout Cambridge and all throughout Somerville and all throughout all these other places. You go to other parts of the country, they don't have that. Of course, there's federal laws. We mentioned the ADA, which is celebrating its 31st year as the preeminent federal civil rights law. And of course, the amendments, which really gave clarity and teeth and enforcement to the ADA. But there's the Rehab Act, which for years stood as really the thing in education that got people with disabilities to be treated the same, and fair housing as well. So despite all of these non-discrimination laws, Carly, you can go to the next slide. Unfortunately, discrimination still exists. People with disabilities are the most or among the most discriminated groups, particularly when it comes to employment. Title I of the ADA is employment, and the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they're our federal agency that ensures equal treatment of people. In their charge statistics, people with disabilities are usually second or third. MCAD, unfortunately, it's like number one. MCAD is the Mass Commission Against Discrimination. They're our state agency that does it. They're a quasi-state agency that ensures that people aren't discriminated against. So the largest finding, the largest reason why employers are found to be discriminating against people with disabilities is the failure to accommodate. So they're not providing reasonable accommodations for their people with disabilities, for their employees. And then there's stereotypes that we have to overcome. There's a general public perception that blind people can't do this, or people in wheelchairs can't do that, or people with autism can't do this or that. We're trying to break those barriers down. Because I'm going to tell you right now, give me a good, reasonable accommodation, and people with disabilities can do just about any job. All right, enough of the tough talk. Let's focus on opportunities, which I much prefer. So this is what your state government is doing. Many of these are funded by federal programs, but are supported by state dollars as well. So you'll see here that you've got at least 4 different secretariats. I think there's 22 agencies up there, and even more or 9 agencies and 22 different programs or something like that. These are all of the different programs to get people employed in the Commonwealth. Many of these, more than half of these, are specifically designed for people with disabilities. That's a good thing. It means we're trying, and it's back to the step 1, step 2. If we can get people resolved, we have the programs to work on. We can get people jobs. We can get people on the career path, but they've got to want to do it. They've got to want to be in the labor force. So many of the programs here, I'm sure some of you have interacted with, whether it's in education and connecting activities. You know, this isn't to mention, by the way, the great programs that we have like Threshold, like the ones at Perkins or the Carroll Center, and all the great other community and nonprofit and education providers we have out there. These are the ones that state government are providing. So there's quite a bit that we're doing, that we take action, that we fund. State budget's about a $46 billion endeavor. About $23 billion of that goes directly to health and human services. In terms of the nation, we lead the nation in just about every metric. And if we don't lead, we're second or third. So it's up to us to lead. Carly, you can go to the next slide. I really like this slide because this is how you all can get involved. Obviously, if you're involved with education, you believe in improving the human condition. and you're gratified by helping people. Well, this is an easy way to remember it. The path to prosperity is paved by perseverance. Who here is in their job right out of high school? Raise their hand. Nobody's going to raise their hand. Why? Because everybody was mentored. Everybody had an internship and then went on interviews and then got their first job and then got a promotion. For people with disabilities, it's no different. Matter of fact, I would assert this is even more important, to be able to give them the opportunities, the foot in the door, the thing that they need to be able to make connections so that they can rise throughout this. Everybody here can be a mentor to a person with a disability. And I would imagine many of you can offer an internship or help somebody connect into an internship. If we have any hiring managers out there, or anybody who knows a hiring manager, you can get some interviews for people with disabilities. Of course, the goal is hiring people with disabilities. But if you have people with disabilities in your organization, we can promote them too. Unfortunately, one of the data points that I left off that I do in some other things is people with disabilities in management is one of the lowest metrics of any minority group, which, by the way, people with disabilities are the largest minority group. So, well, what are we doing at MCB? We're doing a number of things. I mentioned our graphic novel. We saw our ad. This is another program we're doing. We partnered with the folks at Work Without Limits over at UMass Medical School to do the Employer Challenge. We like to say, do one more thing. So we're engaging companies throughout the Commonwealth to try to do one more thing. Hey, can you mentor one more person? Can you have one more internship for a person with a disability? Can you get them one more interview? Can you do one more thing for people with disabilities than you did last year? Just one more thing. Now, if everybody in the Commonwealth, if all the businesses in the Commonwealth adopt that strategy, we'll have people with disabilities employed in no time. We have other strategies too that I've worked on nationally. This is the Work Matters report. You can go there, SEED. This is a combination of the Council of State Governments, National Conference of State Legislatures. They convened a task force, which I was pleased to take part in and help author this report. We looked at all 50 states and the territories. And really what we did is produce a document to inform policymakers. We offered 13 different policy options. We looked at over 200 programs across all 50 states that were working. So these are real life examples that work. Please go in, take a look, steal the program, copy the program. Let's get more people with disabilities into the workforce. And then once they're in the workforce, let's get them jobs. Let's get them on the path to independence and self-determination. I'd like to end on this quote from one of our first commissioners, Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. I thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to an interactive dialogue here, both tonight and at any time you want to reach me. Please go to mass.gov/MCB. We are there to serve. We're your state government working for you. Let us know how we can be of value tonight and in the future. So I'm looking forward to some questions.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Carla Kath. I am the Director of Communications for MCB. And we do have a couple of questions already, but if you haven't submitted them, please go ahead and submit those questions now for Commissioner D'Arcangelo, and we will get to as many as we can with the rest of the time that we have here this evening. The first question for you, Commissioner, is about transportation. And I know that that is a topic that is near and dear to our community. It actually just had a town hall this month on October the 7th with the MBTA to talk all things transportation. So let me read you this question. It says, I agree with your choice of benefits or work. pushing for work for our son, but having a terrible time finding transportation. Any insight into transportation if you aren't on a subway line or a bus line in town?
That is an excellent question. Thank you for that. So traditionally, transportation has been a very significant barrier for many prevalent types, many different types of disabilities. And obviously, COVID has been a very difficult thing. There's been a lot of suffering. You know, it's terrible. However, we have learned things through COVID. And some of the things, like even what we're doing tonight, these virtual meetings have increased. Well, what have they also done? They've ameliorated and in sometimes even eliminated transportation barriers that have historically been there. So this is a great opportunity for people with disabilities who normally would have to rely on travel to be able to get somewhere. Now, if it can be done electronically, you can do it over Zoom, you can do it over WebEx or over the phone or over the computer in some way. I think that's a huge long-term opportunity. We've seen growth in that area short-term at MCB with placements that we've made. It may not work for every job and it may not work for every person with a disability, but in many cases, it's helped ameliorate. So particularly though, to your scenario, what I would say is if you are at the program level and you can work with a state agency, make sure you take advantage of those programs and services. Because MCB, for example, we might even provide a driver to be able to get somebody to and from work, or a transportation option. MRC, our sister agency, also explores things like that. What we're going to do is we're going to develop a specific case-by-case plan, an individualized plan with you and your specific situation to figure out what's going to work best. Because if you want to work, the last thing we want to do is keep you from work just because of transportation barrier. What I would say is come into the system, let's talk about it, let's solve for it. I'm confident we're going to be able to provide something. Even working with the people at the MBTA and the different RTAs, there's solutions that we can potentially explore. So what I would say is get a dialogue going. If you have further questions, contact me directly so we can go into specifics.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner. And I have another one a topic that we did another town hall on, I believe this spring. And the question is about assistive technology. So it says, if an employer wants to hire someone with a disability, how can they get adaptive equipment?
Sure, that's a great question. So, we talked about, unfortunately, the failure to accommodate, right? One of the things that we're constantly trying to do, and one of the aims of our campaign that I put up, the Do One More Thing campaign, is to get in there and give employers education that there are resources available to them, that they're not all alone. Now, yes, if it's a small accommodation, we do kind of, expect the employer to be able to do it if it's a de minimis thing. But if it's a major thing, again, talk to us, talk to government, talk to the various programs that are out there. We have a mass match program, which is terrific, which is MRC and Easter Seals, and it's a publicly funded program to be able to get technology out there to ameliorate whatever needs to be done to accommodate the person in the workplace. If you want to work, we're not going to let things like devices get in the way of you working. We want to be able to provide those devices. So again, reach out to us, let us know who we need to inform or whatever resource we need to be able to provide to get you employed. There's resources available is the bottom line answer to that question.
All right. And maybe we can share a couple of those resources in the
Sure.
chat.
Yeah, mass match is one, yeah.
And the next question, again, we've had so many events this month. We actually had one last night with parents of children who are blind and visually impaired in the Boston Public Schools. And this question is about parents. It says, my question is that a lot of parents hold the children back and would rather have them in a day program. So how do you encourage those parents to get involved?
Yeah, this is a very, very important area and one that we've grappled with. And I don't know if we've solved for it completely. What I'd say is it's a case-by-case basis. And for some families, it is a family decision and there's guardianship involved. I just got guardianship of my daughter. So I understand that dynamic and how it can be challenging on a number of levels. So I'm going to say first, it's going to be case by case, but I really believe the fullest potential is to be independent and self-determined. And I believe that work can really help bring those, and then that combination helps enhance dignity. I really believe that. So it's not always an easy thing though, because everybody has their own unique situation. So I think to the best extent possible, you want to give people access to opportunities and provide them with the opportunities. Then it's up to them to take the opportunities. That goes back to what we were talking about with so many people out of the workforce. That is a major consideration that families need to make, that the individual with the disability and families need to make. So I respect decisions on both sides of that. However, I'm trying to incent people to get into the labor force because I do think ultimately it can lead to enhanced independence, enhanced self-determination, and enhanced dignity. I really do believe that.
All right. And we have another question here. So the question is, where are you seeing good examples of employers or individuals who are great employers of people with disabilities? And I really hope that you mention Employer of the Year, and that some of these people in this event tonight will become that, or that.
Always Health Partners, right, Carla? Was
Yes.
this year, last year it was Spalding, or the year before was it Mass General? So
they've all changed names, but yes, this year it was Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, and last year was Always Health Partners.
Always Health Partners. Thank you, Carla, for that clarification. So we've had a strong showing in healthcare, but we've had strong showings in a number of areas. State Street has been great. CVS has been great. I mean, there really is a long list in Massachusetts. We've been blessed to have a corporate community with great corporate governance and responsibility on their boards and in their leadership that has reached out. They're some of the best organizations that we work with, quite frankly, but it runs all throughout the spectrum. We have mom and pops approaching us. We have mid-sized businesses that we work with. Verk Enterprises isn't a big business. They run convenience stores, but they have great success employing people with disabilities. So it really does run the spectrum. A lot of the major institutional players are good. A lot of the healthcare, a lot of the higher ed, and so I don't want to single people out, but if you're interested in learning more about how to join that group, please contact us. We have programs specifically devoted to this. If you're interested, we're interested in you and moving this forward for you and your organization.
All right.
There's real talent in that pool of people with disabilities. Let me tell you, and whoever taps it is going to be at a competitive advantage. We've seen it time and time again. I'm sorry, Carla, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. We actually have a participant here who wanted to speak live, but I am going to read what they wrote here for you tonight. So it says, I am a Lesley alum, staff, and adjunct faculty. I'm also an MCB client. I would like to thank all the staff at MCB for their life-changing support. And they wish that they could speak here to explain how much that MCB has helped. But also a huge shout out to Dr. Nicole Ross, who is one of our very favorite eye care providers, and one of the ones that all of you saw in our What's Your Vision spot that we showed a few minutes ago. But it says that Dr. Nicole Ross at MCB flipped my life completely in a positive path. So thank you so much for sharing that. We will definitely share that with Dr. Ross and our staff. But I think it's stories like this, right, Commissioner, that really help to motivate us and our team to help us keep going.
You can thank us all day. I thank you. I thank you and all of our consumers for really having the gusto to want to be in the workforce and to persevere and become successfully employed and engage in even things like this. So that's the good stuff. Yes, Dr. Ross, we love Dr. Ross. We were just with her last night. She does a fantastic job. But that's what we get paid for. That is our job. You're the one doing the good thing. You're the one that makes it possible. So thank you, whoever you are. I'm sorry, we don't have a name, Carla, but interact with us. I'm sure Carla will want to feature in our newsletter or something.
Absolutely. Next on my list. Thank you again for that wonderful comment. It's great to hear that all is going well. We have one more question, and that is, what state or federal policy changes do you think would be most critical to make?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're working on a number of things at the state level. Governor Baker's been very interested. Secretary Sutters has been very interested. And we were getting ready to make some major announcements and move, and then COVID happened. So some things, I don't want to say they got put on the back burner because these are priorities. They are, but there's only so many hours in a day. And a lot of focus was put into containing the pandemic, keeping people healthy. I'm very pleased to report that we didn't see any major breakouts in the blindness community. That's very significant. So that's, again, a credit to all the consumers, a credit to our team who worked so hard on all of the various, whether it was vaccine clinics that we tried to make accessible, or even before that, all of the PPE that we helped arrange, and so many different things that were not in our core mission when we began 2020. I mean, we closed for business on Friday, March 13th of that pandemic, and we were open Monday morning, 9 a.m. and didn't miss a beat. That is a huge credit to our team and to all of our consumers for being so resilient, so adaptive. As Janet had mentioned up at the top, one of the programs that I'm trying to push, and we actually did, if you go on our website, mass.gov/MCB, and go to one of our reallotment projects, I really believe that it's time to start using disability as a qualification. I would assert that people with disabilities bring with them natural problem-solving abilities. And the prerogative that their disability brings them is an asset to many organizations. So let's start looking at it as a positive rather than traditionally it's looked at as, oh, well, they can't do this, can't do that. I'm not interested in what you can't do. I'm interested in what you can do and focusing on that. We become what we think about. And if we think in positive terms, we'll achieve positive results. I mean, it might sound cliched or old-fashioned, but it works. And these are long-standing challenges. We have to solve them incrementally. So we're trying our best to have new ideas, whether it's graphic novels or the ads or other things that we're doing. Efforts are being made. Your state is leading, and we're trying our best. We need to do more, though. That's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, is trying to influence and persuade you good people to use your intellect, your keen insight in education and all of the qualifications that you have to improve this. Let's get more people into the labor force. Let's get more people employed. We believe it brings dignity, independence, self-determination, and improves the human condition. That's why I get up every day.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner. I think that was the last question, and I see President Steinmeier back. So
yes,
thank you again.
Thank you, Carla. And David, thank you so much for moments both sobering and inspiring, but really leaving us with that inspiring thought to ultimately think about how we can do one more thing to change this landscape and join what you're doing, which is definitely changing the landscape. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Good night now. Thank you for joining us.